The latest accounting error just dropped from the Pentagon. Announcement says that the $6.2 billion was given to Ukraine in addition to what they were supposed to receive because of an accounting error. This is not the first time this has happened with the United States misplacing an incredibly large sum of money and just saying it randomly disappeared and there was no way to track what happened to it. When Donald Rumsfeld in 2001 on September 10th announced that the Pentagon had just completely misplaced $2.3 trillion. Who knows what happened to it? We don't have black budget projects. We don't fund any other proxy wars abroad. We don't have any black sites. We don't fund military bases and coups in other countries, so we don't have to worry about the nature of these funds being used for nefarious ends. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. The Pentagon's Ukraine accounting error has been revised up to $6.2 billion. So, this hasn't gotten much coverage from the corporate press and the legacy media, as it never will, because this is something that would stoke fires in the hearts of the American people because they realize they would effectively be being robbed. But they don't really paying attention to that, and just like you don't really have the capacity to vote, you don't have the power to influence this decision. But what it states is the Pentagon has found it has overestimated the amount of funding for ammunition, missiles, and other equipment it sent to Ukraine by $6.2 billion due to an accounting error, a spokesperson said on Tuesday, more than double the amount previously disclosed. The value of the accounting error was revised up to $3 billion. That was the first report by Reuters in May, the result of the assigning a higher warranted value on U.S. weaponry shipped to Ukraine. Additional funding was uncovered as the Pentagon officials researched the situation more thoroughly and clarified protocols for valuing equipment based on financial management regulation and Department of Defense policy. Pentagon Deputy Press Secretary Sabrina Singh said. The $6.2 billion breaks down to $3.6 billion for the fiscal year of 2023 and $2.6 billion for the fiscal year of 2022, she said. Adding to this, the errors did not impact the size of the presidential drawdown authority for the support of Ukraine. And I don't buy at all the fact that this wouldn't have diminished people's support for Ukraine when they see that, what's that, $6.2 billion just went missing and the Pentagon can't seem to find or care to investigate on what's going on with this money, but they care about what's happening under $400 with your Venmo transactions, and they'll go send one of the new 87,000 IRS agents after you to go investigate your small, minute transaction, but you can't know what happened to $6.2 billion of the American taxpayers' money being sent to a fucking proxy war. That is a joke at the highest turn, and anyone that says otherwise, I would argue, isn't even a thinking person. So, we go ahead and we see the post-millennial. They have the actual footage from the person at the Pentagon claiming and explaining this, so let's go ahead and jump into this.
Following up from some announcements earlier this year, during the department's regular oversight of our execution of Presidential Drawdown Authority for Ukraine, we discovered inconsistencies in equipment valuation for Ukraine. In a significant number of cases, services used replacement costs rather than net book value, thereby overestimating the value of the equipment drawn down from U.S. stocks and provided to Ukraine. Once we discovered this misvaluation, the comptroller reissued guidance on March 31st, clarifying how to value equipment in line with the financial management regulation and DoD policy to ensure we use the most accurate of accounting methods. We have confirmed that for FY23, the final calculation is $3.6 billion, and for FY22, it is $2.6 billion for a combined total of $6.2 billion. These valuation errors in no way limit or restricted the size of any of our PDAs or impacted the provision of support to Ukraine. And while the DoD retains the authority to utilize the recaptured PDA, this has no bearing on appropriated USAI or Ukraine PDA replenishment funding approved by Congress.
Okay, so here we have the Pentagon mouthpiece go ahead and just saying, yes, we've misplaced $6.2 billion. They didn't say, don't worry, this has never happened before. But you would think if money like this had gone missing to such a degree, or my goodness, something to the degree of $2.3 trillion, we would surely mention it when $6.2 billion has gone missing, because we would want to hold an account to our past. And we want to be honest with the fact of what we're doing, because we're an honest institution, as the Pentagon certainly is. So we see here, and I just looked up $6.2 billion. Could have gotten some really scuffed stuff if this had happened a week prior. Let's be honest. Who knows what the memes I would have seen here. But we see from Zero Hedge, and then we told them it was $6.2 billion an accounting error. And it's just all the elites laughing. Here you have Ronald Reagan, George Bush, and so many others. And not Jerome Powell. And if you don't know who Jerome Powell is actually the head of the Federal Reserve. And this is just such a banger Twitter account. He just completely trolls and rickrolls people about what happens with the Fed. So let's go ahead, dive into what we see with Nina Turner. It says a $6.2 billion accounting error. And she's just losing her mind. It says, Nina, yesterday you wanted the same people in charge of our healthcare. And it's because Nina Turner is a staunch lefty. She works for the Young Turks, which is TYT. And she talks all the time about the nature of how we deserve free healthcare and the government should provide it for us. It's like you want the people who lost $2.3 trillion the day before 9/11, or at least announced it then, to go ahead and present you the healthcare system that you wish to reside under. I'm pretty sure that that's a more dangerous thing to do when you wouldn't trust them to go to countries in the Middle East because you're afraid that they'll kill brown people. So, completely stunning. And here we see from Zero Hedge, it says the Pentagon has made $6 billion accounting error, clearing more aid for Ukraine. At what point does this not just appear to be a money laundering scheme, with Joe Biden's family having ties to Ukraine and so many other people in the Democratic Party and the Republican establishment as well, just being tied to these massive multinational corporations like Burisma and then other companies in China? It says, due to a massive accounting error, which happened just 4 weeks after the $3 billion accounting error, the value of weapons supplied to Ukraine by the United States was overstated by $6.2 billion over the past years, according to the AP. And the AP being the Associated Press, and we've already watched this video. But like I said, there's almost nothing on this coverage, even on a website like Zero Head. It says right here, the United States has approved 4 rounds of aid to Ukraine totaling around $113 billion, some of which went towards replenishing U.S. military equipment used on the front lines. In December, Congress approved the last round of funding, totaling around $45 billion for Ukraine and NATO allies. The extra $6.2 billion found on Ukraine comes as the country begins its counteroffensive against Russia in an attempt to reclaim territory held by the Kremlin forces since February 2022. Thus far, the counteroffensive has come up against heavily mined territory and terrain, reinforced defensive fortifications, according to Ukraine's commander of armed forces, Valery Zaluzhny, which I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sure I butchered it. U.S. officials still have not provided the exact totals for the amount of money that remains for Ukrainian Security Assistance Initiative drawdowns, which provide long-term funding for the purchase of weapons, including air defense systems. And those air defense systems are also dual-use rocket launcher systems, which we have in Poland, which goes against the Minsk Accords, which is a major thing, and this was a huge thing that Putin had against the United States and NATO, was the fact that these dual-use launchers were in Poland, and they could be used to establish nuclear armaments within Poland's borders and then send them into Russia before Russia could properly react. That was a huge quarrel that Putin and his government had with NATO in prior engagements before the Ukrainian war itself had even started, and now we see that these things are being installed within Ukraine. I can only imagine this is going to make Russia's animosity towards the United States and NATO and Ukraine so much higher, and we see the fact that Russia has changed their laws and effectively their constitution around nuclear armaments to see the fact that they can engage with a preemptive nuclear strike if they feel threatened, and they will do so justifiably under their law now that it has been changed. That's really all I have for this. Go ahead, give this a like if you enjoyed it, a thumbs down if you didn't, share it with someone if you will, if you enjoyed the video, and tell someone you love them. Peace.